lot of people. I'm leaving meeting. No. A lot of agents and Chris here. So we know from Laura, one of the Lauras, we have two Lauras here and a bunch of agents, and Amy, our transaction manager. I guess we'll go ahead and introduce ourselves before we start talking about the current market conditions. I'm Constance Spencer. I'm the associate broker of Porcupine Real Estate. And anybody want to unmute and jump in with your introductions?
Yes, I'm Michael Elliott. I'm an agent with Porcupine, and my experience in the past has been running businesses. And then when I retired, I was saying, what can I do? And I thought of all of the experiences I had in buying and selling properties, not just corporate companies and things, but many, many different relocation properties. I made a lot of mistakes and I learned a lot of lessons, and I thought maybe that I could be of help to our clients by helping them avoid the mistakes I made in the past.
Amy, do you want to say hello?
Hi, I'm Amy. I'm the transaction manager. So if you go under contract with any of our agents, you'll see a lot of emails from me.
Very, very valuable service that we offer with Porcupine Real Estate. A lot of agents don't have somebody double checking all the compliance, and it makes things a lot smoother when you have a transaction coordinator keeping all the details in line, because there are a lot of details. And then Chris is here to speak on financing.
Hello. Yeah, my name's Chris. I'm with Lakeview Mortgage. I'm a local lender. I've been doing this for about 20 years, and I've been with Porcupine from the very beginning.
And we also have another agent here. Diane, do you just want to say hello?
Hello, I'm Diane. I'm fairly new at this. I'm thankful that I have Amy and Constance and Mark and Michael and everybody to work with, and Chris, so that they can sort of teach me what they know before I mess up too badly.
So that's who we have to answer questions. We will get started. It looks like we may have people joining as we go. So, oops, I went too far. Current market conditions. If anybody is in New Hampshire or has been paying attention to moving to New Hampshire, you will probably hear the word seller's market a lot. So I've been an agent since 2015, and this trend has been going this direction for a long time, honestly. We've been coming out of, the last downturn in the market when I got licensed, and properties were hitting about the same value or what appraised value that they were selling before the crash of 2008 when I started, and now we've definitely exceeded that, and kind of anticipated that as people were no longer upside down in their mortgages after 10 years, that we'd start listing and selling, and that did happen to a point. But then we had COVID hit, and we have people moving to New Hampshire in record numbers. As Porcupine Real Estate, we are specifically trying to help Liberty folks move to New Hampshire, but now there is just a shift in that almost all the buyers that I've run across, even with other agents, are from out of state moving to New Hampshire. They want to be in the country. New Hampshire has amazing statistics for raising families. So we have specialized with buyers at Porcupine Real Estate for years. We obviously also have listings. We're a full service agency, but because we're specializing in helping people get to New Hampshire, we've been working with buyers for years. So learning this new extreme seller's market, which I think is the only way we can call it, has been an experience. And I've learned a lot, and we're going to talk about some of the stories of how I've been able to get many buyers' homes in this extremely tough markets where there have been 50 plus offers on properties, or a market where you can't even get into the house, and if you can get into the house, you might get 15 minutes showing, and that's it. We had actually their house was featured in coming up, so maybe I'll save that story for as we go through these. But I wanted to do the webinar in this kind of story format because as we go through, there'll be points of what made each offer unique. And the one thing that I, as an agent working in this market, have learned is that each property is unique and each seller wants something different, and it's not always price based. And so as an agent, finding out what makes that particular offer the strongest for that house is the key to getting buyers under contract. So we'll get started. I need to move your faces a little. There we go. So this is actually the oldest of the slides, and this one closed, I believe, last December, maybe early this year. This one I picked because even though this seller's market has gotten stronger since these folks wanted out of Manchester. They had a no yard, 3rd floor walk-up apartment, but not the best neighborhood, I know, because we're neighbors. They moved out. They had very little saved, but they decided to buy a house. And they actually when I went to write the offer, they had 100% loan to value financing with a program called Rural Development. Chris can speak of this. Sorry about that. When I went to write the offer, I asked them how much we put down for earnest money, and I found out it was a tiny amount because that's all they had. They put their inspection and appraisal fees on their credit card, and they bought a house, and the seller paid their closing costs. The seller made a few repairs. So the house needs some work. It's definitely cosmetically in rough condition. But we did have a home inspection. We didn't have to waive the home inspection, and the sellers made some repairs. So these folks have over an acre now in Northfield, which is maybe about 45 minutes from Manchester. And they're moved their kids to the country. They accomplished their goal, and they were successful because they worked with a lender such as Chris to find out what they could do, and they didn't, you know, they took the initiative to do it. A lot of, I think, renters don't think they have the ability to buy, and yet these folks did. Here's another one. This one just closed despite the snow on the ground. This one closed at the end of June. And like I said, each of these stories, I'm going to give you a little bit. And if you have questions, please put them in the chat room. I keep looking at my watch, not because I'm trying to get out of here, but because Amy's sending me text of questions. I had to charge my phone, and my charger's in the other room. So this is how I'm finding out what questions we have. So this one, we were not the highest or best offer. We actually lost out on the house. But because people are going so crazy with their offers in the seller's market, Londonderry is one of the hottest towns in New Hampshire right now. The buyers backed out. They actually ghosted the listing agent, and she needed, like Amy does our compliance, there was some errors on the purchase and sales that made it not a valid offer. So they didn't sign it and just walked away from the transaction. So the listing agent I see it's still active. I contact the listing agent, and she's like, well, you guys are number 2 and we can't get a hold of these guys, so I guess you're it. But hey, just so you know, the sellers are getting divorced and Mr. Seller is a bit difficult. I'm editing this story for you guys to make it PG. So not that the listing agent was she wasn't saying anything terrible, but it was obvious reading through the lines that difficult was a little under. So they actually went back into mediation, and we waited. And my buyers kept going to open houses, and I showed them a couple other places, but we had verbally had an accepted offer. It took about another 3 weeks for the lawyers to say, no, you have to sign this offer. And so that's when we went under contract. The only counter was they didn't want to sell until their son was through his year of high school. So we extended till the end of June. And my buyers, being renters who had flexibility and were willing to wait, is how we got the house. They had a home inspection. It was for information purposes only. They could have negotiated after that because we actually found some relatively big issues, but they chose not to. And we offered to pay above appraisal because my buyers had a bit of savings that they could have used, but we didn't need to. It appraised, and they are now first-time home buyers in one of the hottest real estate markets. The appraisal actually came in for more than they paid for the house because they were flexible and could wait. So earlier I said the market conditions. So these folks were the ones that had a house they saw online that they just absolutely loved. And I scheduled for the very first showing because they were doing delayed showings. It was for a Tuesday. And there's some houses that they'll only let like 50 showings happen and then they cut it off. That's it. So we had booked one, and somebody wrote a sight unseen offer that the seller accepted before we ever got into the house. So they didn't get that one. And they didn't get another one that we offered like 75 over list. But this one we got, and I asked the listing agent, how many offers we get, because I do call the listing agents ahead of time. And I ask before we submit an offer, like, how many offers do you have in hand? How many you're expecting? Are you seeing offers over list price? The listing agents can't tell us all the details of an offer. Obviously, they have to confidentiality to their sellers, but they can answer some questions. And finding out kind of where we were, we wrote an offer. What the inspections were for information purposes, because it was a bit of an older house, so they didn't want to waive inspections completely. And the offer price, and because they were putting such a large amount down, they waived the need for an appraisal. And hopefully all that makes sense. Chris is going to talk about the appraisal gap here in a bit. But basically, even if it appraised for less than their offer price, they were going to pay the full offer price. And so again, we were not the highest offer, but the listing agent said that we had the best overall package because we hit all the points that the sellers were worried about. Do we have any questions at the moment, or should I keep going with our? No? Okay. We're good? Okay.
I don't have any questions.
And then this one just closed last week. This one was on the market for about 30 days before we put it under contract. My buyers put it under contract, and the particular reason this one wasn't selling was it's mixed use, which means it has a residential and a commercial space. And this one actually is almost a horror story. They almost didn't get it because they used a lender who gave them bad information. Fortunately, we were able to save the deal at the last minute. But in the process, we found out, and Chris can speak to this. Chris was not the lender, just so everybody knows. The buyers brought their own lender, and we did find out that you can use FHA loans, which is a government insured loan with little money down for mixed use. So that's another thing that we've learned along this process. And they were able to buy with the seller paying some of their closing costs for under appraised value in Concord, which is the actual Concord and Manchester, as I said earlier, are a couple weeks ago were announced as the hottest real estate market. So often looking for properties that have been on the market for more than the 2 days, those are the ones that we're going to be able to write an offer. So you still get the home inspections. You don't have to waive that. Maybe under list price, maybe with seller paid closing costs. So if those things are important to you, looking at the days on the market really helps. This one in Epping was also under list price. Epping, for those who don't know, is probably 25 minutes closer to the ocean than Manchester and Concord. The Seacoast is also, the Newmarket one was the Seacoast, very, very hot real estate market. But this one just needed a lot of updating and the seller needed to sell. So we went in under list price. They negotiated up a bit, but we got pretty good price and they've already ripped out and redone the kitchen. It looks great. They worked with a local lender and the seller was also under contract for a different fixer-upper, and she needed it to happen in a certain time frame, or she was going to lose out on her new house. So she was a little more flexible with her offer, with what the offer she'd accept. And the other extreme is sometimes you're in such a hot market and you're competing. These folks and the Londonderry folks were looking at the same time, often at the same houses. And instead of waiting and being patient, they went the other direction. They waived inspections. They put enough down that they didn't even need an appraisal. And it was about the smoothest transaction that you could have right now in a seller's market. But I think there were about 30 offers that they had to beat to get this house. So as I went through those stories, we heard lots of different offer strategies. Obviously, any agent who you're going to be working with, if you don't have a pre-approval or proof of funds, hopefully you're working with us, but those two things, like you have to have either a pre-approval or proof of funds before you can even get into some of the houses. They will require us to send your pre-approval letter before they will schedule a showing for the really, really hot towns. There are certain contingencies on our standard contract. The inspections and the appraisal are the biggest ones. And right now, pretty much somebody getting an offer accepted, leave it. You might have to waive one of those. A lot of people cannot waive the appraisal because it's required for your financing and the bank requires it. So if you're in that situation where you don't have a lot of money down, you're probably best looking for, like I said, houses that have been on the market for a little while, newer homes where you'd feel comfortable waiving the inspections. Or if you aren't comfortable waiving the inspections, which totally makes sense because if you don't have a lot of money to cover the appraisal gap, you probably don't have enough money to fix a roof right after purchasing. In that case, we're gonna have to look at other ways, probably location, because we have some great places that are little in small towns that have fiber and so many people working from home. It gives you some options. And then being flexible in your closing date. One that we didn't include here, I just closed last week. The family made the offer in February. They beat out another offer because they were willing to wait until July to close. Because again, the sellers wanted to finish their kids out in school and sports. So my buyer's like, yeah, we'll do that. And I'm fairly certain that between February and when they closed, the house probably went up in value by at least $15,000 because it was not an inexpensive home to begin with, and our appreciation rate has been pretty high for some of these places. So now I've talked a lot. I'm going to turn it over to Chris. If you have anything you want to say about any of those slides, feel free to have me back up. And you can talk more about the financing.
Hey, everyone. Is there anything specific you'd like me to go over? I know we have a pretty small group tonight, so there's no need for me to talk about a bunch of stuff that that someone isn't interested in.
Maybe like what specifically in the seller's market has been the biggest hurdle for you as a lender? And then we can see if Amy's got anybody in chats that's asking any questions, or if anybody wants to unmute and ask Chris a question.
For me, I don't really see, well, I guess the biggest hurdle that we face is just the timing on appraisals. The appraisers are cherry picking, for lack of a better term, the appraisals. So, there's only so many appraisers in any given area. And a lot of them got really used to not having to leave their home during COVID because the guidelines were that they didn't have to enter homes. So with things as busy as they are and appraisers having to go back into homes again, we're seeing longer turn times on appraisals, and the further off the quote beaten path the home is, the longer it is. And sometimes it costs the buyer a little bit more money. But just communicating that with people and setting everyone's expectations is really the key that I've found. One of the things that I've offered that has come in handy a lot of times, and actually just came in very useful this morning, is I've always like to call the listing agents when an offer is being presented to introduce myself and to advocate on the buyer's behalf. And it really does two things. One, it lets them know that they're working with a lender that is on top of everything, that they know what's going on with their clients and knows that they'll be able to communicate with them. And then it allows the listing agent to ask questions about the buyer. Some people will write a letter, or if you go on to a very quick pre-qualification process with some companies, they don't do the research and they don't get the documentation that's required to really make sure that someone is pre-qualified or not. And there's nothing a listing agent hates more than to have a surprise that something is going to work out halfway through. So me being able to advocate on people's behalf and let them know that I really have checked their financials and their assets, and I really do have automated underwriting, an underwriting answer, that means everything. And this morning on an offer with Michael, I spoke with the listing agent, and then the broker of the place actually called me back, and they had some questions about if the appraisal doesn't come in and how is that going to work. Also, the people were only doing a 5% down payment, and I let them know, basically educated them on how appraisals are going to work, and that if this particular house, since this particular home was just purchased a month ago, but the current owner can't stay there, they have to move back home. So they're selling it. I let them know that that's probably going to be about what it appraises at. And in this case, the client was able to come in with a certain amount above the appraisal if it didn't appraise. And I just let them know that, look, if it doesn't appraise, at least the seller is still getting above market value for their home. And that was an angle, that was a perception that they didn't think of before. And between me talking with them a couple times and then a couple other things, we actually got the offer accepted today. So that little bit in that communication, letting everyone know that this is a team effort, it goes a long way. We all want the same thing. The sellers want to be happy, buyers want to be happy. So we working together is crucial.
Yeah, I think we actually need to change the slide from local lender to like experience, or one that we've worked with and have good experience with, because it does make a difference having a local lender. To piggyback on your story, I closed on a house on Friday that we were not the highest offer, and the buyers had used a national fill in the blank kind of lender, And the listing agent, being an experienced agent, knew that that could create problems and asked them to get pre-qualified with a local lender. They didn't have to use it, they just had to present a pre-qualification. And their approval amount dropped by 10,000, and they could no longer afford to buy the house. They went from a conventional to an FHA loan, which for this particular house was going to be an issue. And so my second best offer, again, got accepted. And I'm often happy when it is this, second best, and then they find out that it's actually like the best package, because we don't want our buyers overpaying, especially in this market. Like we respect that you're putting a lot of money into a home in this market, and we want to be the best if it's your dream home. But we don't want to be like ridiculous over. I was the listing agent for a house recently, and the agent never called me to ask how many offers there were. And had he called me to ask how many offers there were, I would have said 0 at that moment. We did end up with 2 offers, but their offer was, I think, about $40,000 more than the next best offer. And he didn't check. He just wrote an offer with the assumption that we would have a pile of them, and we didn't. So I think his buyers probably ended up paying much more than they would have needed to had he just called me. And he probably would have come in at list price. Instead, he went over. So, sorry, Chris, I didn't mean to take over, but that appraisal gap that you were talking about, and it's on our slide, is probably, and the appraiser is probably the most difficult thing right now. So does anybody have any questions about what the appraisal gap is?
One thing I would like to thank Chris. You did a really good job in explaining that just because my client only wanted to put down 5%, it wasn't because they didn't have the money. It was because the other assets that they had their money into paid a high interest rate. And so why take money out of that when they would lose that difference in interest, and that went over very well with the listing agent.
Thank you. I knew there was something I forgot to mention with that I opened up with. Yeah, I basically let the seller's agent know, they said it's only 5% down. And I said, right, but with how low the interest rates are, it makes 0 financial sense to put down more money into a home that's not going to make you any money, that they're going to make more off of their money in another investment vehicle. And that was another thing that they just had never thought about, because as Constance, has led to, not everyone has the same experience. And so many agents have just been told that you have to take one type of loan, you have to have this type of a down payment to make it be successful. And it's just not true. On the lending side, whether you're putting 5% down or 50% down, it's all the same for us. It's just numbers. You either qualify or you do not qualify. You don't get an easier underwriting package or requirement if you're putting a lot of money down. It's the same no matter what. The appraisal gap, basically that is what we've seen now, since some offers have to come in so high to get accepted that there aren't comparable sales to justify that higher price. So the gap would be whatever the appraisal comes in at and what the offer price is. And a lending institution is only going to lend based on what the appraised value is. So with a gap, sometimes the agents will put in, that the buyer is willing to pay X amount over an appraisal gap to give an incentive for the seller to take their offer. And on my side, all that means is you'd be coming to the closing table with that amount extra. I mean, it's simple numbers. If you bid $450 on a house and the appraisal came in at $425, your down payment and financing program is based off of the $425. And if you said you were going to come in at $10,000 over the appraised value, the amount of money you would need at closing would be your closing costs plus the down payment based off of $425, and then plus that additional $10,000.
Chris, do you see that this appraisal gap is narrowing now as this market begins to not be quite so hot as it was?
I haven't had a ton of issue with it. I would say since the beginning of the year, probably 15% of, out of say, I don't know, 35 purchases or so, maybe 4 or 5 have had an issue. And in almost every single one of those, we knew there was going to be an issue. It was blatant that there was going to be an issue. And there's less of a chance of an appraisal not coming in now than there was, say, 4 months ago, because those homes that have all sold, and that went on the market in April, May, June at such a higher price, they've all closed by now. So those are comparable sales that appraisers can use on appraisals for new homes.
Yep. Amy, do you want to give our question?
Yeah. Have you ever had a situation where people were able to purchase a new home contingent upon the sale of the home they are leaving to purchase the new home?
Yes, but not recently. That is actually the first question that people ask when I call the listing agent to ask if there's any other offers, or what the seller is specifically looking for in an offer. The first question I'm usually asked is, do the sellers or do the buyers have anything to sell? Removing that contingency is almost required at this point to get a house under contract. So there are ways to do that. I know Diane's on mute, but she's had buyers who sold, and then and I have as well. They sold, but they asked for a lease back because the market where they were selling was also very desirable. So they were able to ask for more time in the house after they sold. That's the best way we're seeing right now for people to remove that contingency.
One of the other ways that I've done for a lot of people is if financially you're in the position where you can carry both homes, to purchase the new house with a low down payment, say 5% down. And then once you close on your existing house, say a month later, 2 months later, whatever it is, couple weeks later, then you can take in the equity that you are planning on using from the sale of your existing home, you can apply that to the principal balance of your new loan, recasting it, and that will lower your payment back down to the new loan amount. And if you're able to put enough against it, then it would also completely eliminate the PMI. That allows two things. One, it gets rid of the contingency, and it also gives people time to move out of their house where they're not, not trying to move out instantaneously from one to another. And in the end, it still gives you still accomplish the same goal. You still have the same down payment and the same payment amount on the new house that you would have. It just takes you a month or two to get there between selling the existing house and putting that down payment against the new house. It's not a refinance, it's just recasting the loan. And some lenders, it's free, some charge a couple $100, but it's, well worth it in the end, in my opinion.
I think in other states, I haven't found one that is offered in our market yet, but there are actually people that are coming up with services that will purchase the old house or allow you to purchase the new house before you sell your old house. Amy's been researching some, but the ones that I've looked into don't offer New Hampshire as a market. I don't know if anybody looks in the market that they're in to see if that's an option. I don't have a lot of details about it because it's not offered here. At least the ones I've looked into, but I think that there's definitely going to be more people offering some kind of short-term. I mean, there's already a lot of people purchasing homes for cash, so people are going to be looking for other ways to make real estate profitable, and short-term loans secured by real estate are probably a pretty good way to make money right now. Yeah, and you covered the teamwork. Do we have any other questions, Amy? Or do we have a follow-up question?
Nothing.
Well, the next slide is questions. So this is your opportunity, folks, if you have questions. I want to again stress what Chris was saying about the people. A lot of listing agents have been in the business for a long time, and they have certain set expectations not based on a seller's market. And one of the things is somebody putting only 5% down or using an FHA loan as a not well qualified buyer, and that's not the case. And having to educate listing agents is part of my job when I'm working with buyers. And that's why I wanted the slides to focus from the folks who put pretty much nothing into the house to the other spectrum where they had the ability to completely say, I'm paying this amount. I have enough savings. If it appraises for under, I'm still paying this amount. And I have enough in savings that I'm going to waive inspections and just repair anything on my own that comes up. So we're definitely working with the whole gamut of buyers. If you have a lot of money and you can pay cash and waive inspections, we can definitely get you a house. But we can also do it.
I know that Chris went over the refinancing option. I didn't hear anything about home equity loans. That's how I actually did mine. Is I got a home equity loan by refinancing my house, and then I paid cash for the house in New Hampshire, and it only increased my mortgage by like $20 a month.
Wow.
So that would be another option, to borrow money against your existing home. That just takes preparation, obviously, so you can have time to pull the money out. So the offer letter isn't contingent upon you pulling money out of the house. But yes, 100%, that is another option.
Yeah, and also people doing that, when you're refinancing, you're usually certifying that you're staying owner occupied. So the house that you purchase, you might need to purchase like a second home or a vacation home or investment home if you refinance to get the cash out. Right, Chris? I mean, again, I'm not the lender.
No, 100%. So in that case, a home equity line versus a refinance, they are two different things, would be the way to go. Because that's generally not a question that's asked. But yes, you would never want to say you're refinancing or you're financing in place as your primary residence and then try to buy a new primary residence right afterwards. That's fraud. That definitely won't go over well.
I didn't commit fraud.
No, not you.
No, I know you're still in your home, so that's
Not
why
you.
I was like
I'm saying some people have asked if they can do that. So no, not you.
I guess I'm just more saying it like, since y'all are in New Hampshire and I'm in a different state, it sounds like my process is slightly different than it would be for a New Hampshire resident, in that, I mean, I asked the lender person that was doing my home equity loan, are y'all going to be required to know what I'm spending the money on? And he's like, no, you can go to a casino and blow it all if you want, just so long as we get paid back. And I'm like, okay.
Exactly. Yep,
So I decided to go that route, paying cash for the New Hampshire house, because like y'all mentioned, the PMI, I don't have to pay that. Yes, I'm paying a little more interest on a higher mortgage, but it's made other parts of the process smoother for me. Just something to keep in mind for out-of-staters.
This is one of those cases where everyone's situation is different, and what's right for one person is not for another person. I can tell you in a lot of cases like this, what I've done is someone will take cash out refinance out of their home and buy the property in another state, New Hampshire, as a second home, which only requires 10% down. And then that way they're still able to do the cash out as a primary residence, do the new purchase in New Hampshire at just 10% down. I mean, obviously more if they can, but that way they're filling those needs. And like you said, the interest rates on mortgages are less than home equity lines, and they're not variable. And a home equity line could be the perfect option for someone such as yourself if you plan on paying it off soon, so you don't have to worry about, you know, the interest going up as prime continues to go up. So everyone's situation is very different, and that's basically why I'm here, is to help talk you through that and explain all the options so we can choose the one that works best for each individual.
Everyone's situation is different and every seller's situation is different. So what they're looking for is also different. So working with a qualified local lender here in New Hampshire, Chris is a great example. Like, work with Chris and, you know, work with our team, because we're asking these questions of the listing agent and trying to get the right scenario so that we can get people the house and get them to New Hampshire. So Amy says we have another question.
Yes. So for out-of-state buyers, can you talk a little bit about the process and the timeline? Like, when does somebody talk with Chris? When do they talk with a real estate agent? And then how best to strategize?
Okay.
I would say with me first. I mean, you know, by all means, if you're reaching out to Constance or, you know, someone on here in the panel, just to introduce yourselves and say, I'm looking to come to New Hampshire, but then they're definitely going to have me talk with you. That way we can strategize, because it all depends on if someone is moving here to live here. Are they just buying an investment property? Are they buying a vacation home? If you're moving to live here, then we have to establish what your income is. Are you moving with the same company, or do you need to get employment here? So there's a lot of different options depending on what one person's goal is. I've had everything from people literally coming here and renting and getting a job, to coming here with their same company, to buying a house as a second home and moving here years down the road. In 20 years, I've never had one scenario be the same. So it definitely comes down to what your situation is and what your goals are, and then to have us strategize. So the short answer would be, talk to me as soon as possible so we can get you set up.
Yep. And yeah, I mentioned earlier that there are people that won't even, I mean, most agents won't work with buyers who don't have a pre-qualification letter and proof of funds, and preferably a pre-qualification letter from a lender that we know it's a valid letter. So definitely that's the first step. I mean, I'd love for everybody to reach out and introduce themselves and let me know what you're going to be looking at, and I can set up a auto search that lets you see where the market's at. It updates as the properties go under contract. It will let you know that they're pending, and it'll let you know when they're closed and what they close for. So it gives you a chance to like start getting a feel for the market. It's something that we offer our buyers or potential buyers, and some folks will never move or haven't moved yet. But feel free to reach out to both Chris and our team when you're in the buying process. Any other questions, Amy? I guess I can't screen share and also look at the chat because I was trying to do that.
Yeah, no.
So that's my email address. Feel free to email me. And like, as you can see from the fact that we have 3 agents here, we actually have more than 3 agents on our team now, and we have coverage for the state. for the more rural areas, if that's the direction you want to go. And that's about it. We are, oh, apparently I'm emailing myself. There we go, porcupinerealestate.com. And we also have a relocation guide that is helpful for the folks that are out of state to check that out. And I think the link, right, Amy, is from porcupinerealestate.com. They can find the
NHrelocationguide.com.
Okay. So if we have no other questions, I don't want to keep you beyond. I mean, Chris, obviously you have things to do, right? I love your view. Like,
Yeah, uncovering my boat, but by all means, I can say non-work related. Thank you, everyone.
thanks for
Laura,
joining.
anyone, if you have questions, please